Hey, John here. In this video I'm going to show you what I do to make sure to at least get my technique practice in every single day, regardless if I feel motivated or not. So what I'm talking about here is practicing in front of the TV, listening to a podcast or something similar where you're not 100% focused on what you're doing here. And a lot of people think that's, the wrong thing to do. And it can be. You shouldn't apply this to when you're trying to learn something new, because then you want the full focus on what you're doing so you get everything correct. But once you start getting things under your fingers, meaning that you can play something, just be able to repeat it slowly and controlled, right? That's all you need to be able to do. But to get to that stage with whatever lick or technique you're working on, you want to do that away from any type of distraction. So I'm not saying this is a great thing to do for everything, obviously, but for the sort of grunt work of getting your technique together, where it takes a ton of reps of grinding at a slow tempo, having some sort of distraction in the form of a podcast, Netflix show, whatever, it's very, very helpful. And before we get started, I just want to show you two clips here. One from Paul Gilbert. This is from Open Counseling. It's just audio, but it's from the late 80s. And he talks with a student about practicing, and basically here's what he has to say.
Would you spend like 20 minutes straight? I mean, like straight playing?
Yeah, that I would spend a long time on. And that's real good stuff. I mean, that's good stuff for like watching TV. I mean, if there's any stuff, and if there's anything that you're going to watch TV to or do something where your brain isn't really focused, I'd be more skilled. I mean, conceivably, you could do a better job paying real close attention, but for me anyway, I'd get incredibly bored. So just take the boredom away from it. You got to make sure you're not doing it sloppy, but after you've got a few licks clean, you can...
So as you could hear, his philosophy is it's better to be 70% focused and actually put in the work instead of being 100% focused on the work, but you never do it because it's too boring. And if you've listened to Paul Gilbert at any point in your life, you know that this really worked for him. Now, besides Paul, I've heard Key Marcello talk about the same thing, and Key Marcello is the former guitar player of Europe, amazing picker and great technique overall and great player. He talked about exactly the same thing. And we also have, outside of the guitar, we have Franz Liszt. He's a very famous composer and pianist. And he basically was called the Paganini of the keyboard or the piano. And in a book that I read by Alan Walker, it was a biography on Franz Liszt, they sent letters back in the day. And in this letter that he sent to a student of his, he said basically when you do your technique routine, your technique exercise on the piano, it's totally all right to relieve the boredom by reading a book at the same time. So that was sort of the Netflix of that time, right? So this whole thing has a really, really long history. So it's a good way of approaching things. And if you're not convinced yet, I have one more clip here from Perlman, and he is the highest level violin virtuoso. He's a legend. And here's what he has to say about it.
Who was it? Andre Previn, who said that he came in one day to watch you practice, or you were practicing, and watching I Love Lucy on television simultaneously?
Well, it depends what you practice. Actually, the best show to practice on is baseball. It's terrific. Because
you can turn off the sound.
You turn off the sound, you see what's going on, and you practice your technique. I'm not talking about practicing thinking or anything like this. That's a totally different thing. I did some of my greatest practicing when I was in London watching cricket. I mean, cricket is, you have a match, and when you hear to some of those guys describing the match, and you say, yes, we have here, oh my goodness, there's 3 rounds. And then for half an hour, there's quiet. Because they're just throwing the ball, and it's a very, very slow game. That's when you practice.
Hopefully by now you're convinced at least enough to try it. And if you watch this channel at all, you know my philosophy of technique practice in general is to keep things very slow and accurate. Because I believe it's a skill, it's not a muscle, so it doesn't make sense to push it all the time. It's totally fine and necessary to push the speed at some point, because otherwise, how would you know if it works? But the more good reps at a very slow tempo, around this tempo. Where you can get everything correct and you have the transition time and all those things that make for a good technique, basically. And if you want something concrete here, I have an acronym, RAT, that stands for relaxed, accurate, and tone. And the first two are pretty obvious, that you want to be relaxed. And the second one, accuracy, no mistakes. So basically nothing should be sounding that you don't want to sound, and should be perfect synchronization, and everything should be on point, basically. And then the last one is tone, and that's very subjective, because I'm not talking about the tone that I use here necessarily, even though I like this tone, otherwise I wouldn't be using it, but it's more about the tone I get out of the instrument. So I want to be really happy with that. And of course, I do this with an amp as well. So that comes down to how hard I pick, where I pick. For example, I don't like this tone, right? But I like this. But that's my personal preference. So the last one is just that you are happy with what you're hearing coming out of your instrument and your amp. That's all. So if you have those three going on, when you practice anything, you're doing a good job. And then every rep that you put in while having those boxes checked will help you to really expand your technique. So I can't stress this enough. I know some people think that, the only way to get faster on guitar is to push the speed all the time and be at the very edge of your ability. Never worked for me, and it hasn't worked for anyone that I talk to either that has really good technique. So I'm not a believer in it at all. And if it's working for you, great, keep doing that. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't do it, but I'm just saying that in my experience, it hasn't worked at all. And also for my students had much better results when they tried my way. So all I'm saying is try doing it this way and see if that helps you. But like I said, if you already have success with whatever way you've been doing it, great, keep doing that. Here's a few examples of some licks you can find on my Patreon. If you're interested in that and want the tabs and the full explanation and lesson for these, you can find a link in the description below. Okay, so here's the walkthrough. Now, as Itzhak said in this clip, he did this for the technical work, and that's what I apply it to as well. And I just want to give you an exercise here that you can try, so you have something to, an example of what I do when I practice in front of the TV or whatever it might be. And obviously you can practice anything when it comes to the technical stuff here. It doesn't have to be this thing in particular, but I just find this as a really good picking exercise overall to get your hands synchronized and using all four fingers and doing it in a very systematic way. So we're just going to start here on the 5th fret. And basically we're going to play 6 notes, starting with the first finger, going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back, 3, 2. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. Then you do that for, let's say, 3 reps. And that's just arbitrary. You can do 4, you can do 10 reps, doesn't really matter. And then after we've done that, that's the first variation. Then we're going to apply one of the practice concepts I talked about here before, which is looping. I'm going to link to that video as well in the description. Basically, if you see this sequence of notes as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we have 6 starting points because it's a loop, right? So now we're going to start on the 2nd note. So it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. Now we're going to start on the 3rd note, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and so on until we're back where we started. And a lot of people, and when I say people, I talk about students here, once they get to this finger, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, they think they're done. But since this finger, you can go 3-4, or it can also be 5-6. So you actually have to start on this as 5. So 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you start on this note, so the last variation here, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm just gonna play through that, and I'm gonna do 2 reps of each, and you can see what I mean. So you just go like this. And as you can see, I'm doing the whole RAT thing, keeping my tone and relaxation and accuracy is on point. Just speeding up here for your convenience. And finally. So that's our variations. Now we want to move them across the fretboard. And I actually prefer working on it this way. So instead of doing 2-3 reps and stopping, I prefer to take each of the 6 variations and just take them up and down the fretboard like this. So we start with the first one. So I do 2 reps, then I go straight to the next string. And usually I change the variation on either side of the string, so meaning the high E string or the low E string on a 6-string guitar. So now I would go to the second variation, starting on the second finger. You get the idea. And then I start on the third finger, go up, start on the fourth, and so on. So I have 6 variations in one position here. And then, that probably takes, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so to go through all of them. We might even be less. I choose another position and do it again, but this time starting on an upstroke. So let's say I jump up to the 9th fret here, so I'm going to be covering 9, 10, 11, 12. Same thing, just 2 reps on each string. And then go through all the variations again, but start with an upstroke. So the reason why I started on upstroke as well is because turning the picking around like that will just make for a way stronger and more balanced right hand. And don't just take my word for it. John Petrucci, Steve Morse, Al Di Meola, among others, have talked about the same thing. So it's really not a waste of time. It will just make your picking technique that much better. So an important part of practicing like this is to make sure that you have something specific to work on. Because if you just sit there in front of the TV and you sort of noodle, that's fine. It's better than not doing anything, but it's not really going to give you the results that you're looking for. So try to be very specific and deliberate when you sit down, so you know exactly what to do and for how long to do it. And if you're watching a regular TV show, they're probably going to be 40 minutes. So you can quite easily design a practice session for that amount of time, and then you can use a timer on the side, and if you want to do that, or maybe you just take a certain amount of exercises, that's my favorite, and you just move them up and down the fretboard, so I get to experience all the different tensions. It makes a huge difference. So go into this with a plan and make sure that you keep the tempo low. And when I talk about the tempo, I mean 60 to 80 BPMs, 2 notes per beat, 8 notes. And the reason for that is because then I can sit there for a long time and I won't worry about hurting myself. And of course you need to take responsibility for that yourself, because I can only show you stuff here. I can't fix it for you, so you need to be in tune with your body and listen to your body and all that stuff so you don't hurt yourself. But if you sit with a proper position, you don't have a weirdly bent wrist or anything like that, and especially if you adhere to that RAT acronym, so relaxation, you should be able to sit there and basically practice for a long time without any risk of injury. Whereas if you sit at your just try to go for it all the time. That's gonna tax your arms and fingers much more, so you won't be able to put in as much time. Don't overthink it though. Just go in with a plan. Make sure that you know what to practice each time you sit down, and then watch an episode of something, listen to a podcast, whatever. And then, of course, get up and have a little break and then come back to it. So this has really helped me in my practice. So try it out for yourself and let me know in the comments how it went. If you want to improve your alternate picking even more, you can check out this routine.